So, trying out a new angle. Trying out something new. Hope you're well. Hope you're well. Hope you're swell. Hope you're wavy. I have a poetry book. It's called Many Shades of Flowers. The Many Shades of Flowers. It's got 40 love poems. And it's $1. Let me show it to you. Many Shades of Flowers. Here it is. Here it is, man. Here it is. The Many Shades of Flowers. This camera is terrible, this particular camera, so you're not going to see the cover art. But yeah. Anyway. It's $1, guys. 40 love poems, $1. Link is in the description. Thank you, and thank you. Please leave me 5 stars. I greatly appreciate 5 stars. Yesterday on my community tab, I shared this video talking about the dating scene in the country Georgia. Not the state of Georgia in America, the country Georgia in Eastern Europe. And it just got me thinking, because, they were talking about modern dating versus traditional dating and all these sort of things. It just got me thinking. I really don't understand the appeal of modern dating. I don't think people are really that happy about it, They'll say that, we don't want to go back and whatnot. But I think outside of those, contexts where, people are trashing tradition and saying that the modern way of doing things is better, Like when you just catch someone on a normal day, I usually hear people complaining about modern dating, saying, oh, it's so trash, people cheat so much these days, and yada, yada, yada. It's usually like talking just about how treacherous the dating streets have become. Like how it's hard to just get into a sincere relationship and be happy because people are just non-committal these days and wishy-washy. It's a mess. But I think there's a lot of beauty in the traditional model. I think the traditional model works. But I think it's a thing of like, the reason why a lot of people just are so rebellious and stubborn and unwilling to trust in the wisdom of the ancients is because sometimes I think, things aren't communicated properly. Like people aren't really given, aren't sold sufficiently on these things. I think you have to market these things properly to really make them appealing. And people need to understand why things are done a certain way, why it's important to treat certain actions as sacred. When you're physically intimate with someone, that's a sacred act. It's very special, it's very intimate, so you shouldn't take that for granted, and we shouldn't just be out here giving ourselves to each other for basically free. But I think people have to understand, it's not enough to just tell them do things this way. Like people have to understand why they're doing it. It makes me think of like, these kids that are born into like Christian households, traditional Christian households, and they grow up and become atheists and they end up hating Christians and yada, yada, yada. Those type of people, there's a lot of them, right? And yeah, we all know them. Maybe some of y'all are like that as well. It's usually because a lot of this stuff was forced on them. They never really made the decision themselves to take that path. It was just kind of forced on them, the religion, and they don't develop a real relationship with God, and it's just ritualistic. They're just engaging all these rituals and repeating all these phrases, and they don't know why they're doing it, and they don't really have any connection to any of it. So they're not having the same experience. You can have a whole bunch of people in the church and a whole group of them might be having an entirely different experience than another group, A friend of mine recently went to Greece. Think about this, guys. This is crazy. She went to Greece to attend a baptism. She's from here, South Africa, and she took a plane to the other side of the planet to attend this baby's baptism. I don't believe in child baptism because it's a child. I don't think children can consent. I don't think a child knows what's going on. So the concept of baptizing a baby, it's silly because it's like the whole concept of being born again, right, is that you lived your life but you're dead to your old ways, and you're choosing to follow a new way, the ways of Christ. That's what it means to be born again. But the baby was just born. They're barely conscious. They don't know what's going on. They're just, like, colors. What colors? Ooh, food. Like, they don't know. They haven't lived. You have to let them grow up and make that conscious choice for themselves. Just like we do with other things. You have to let children grow up before they make big decisions. So I think baptism is a very personal decision you have to make. I don't think it's your parents' job to baptize you or take you to be baptized. I think you have to make that choice. Like, I want to get baptized. You have to make that choice yourself. Otherwise, you're being forced down this path. You know, my friend was telling me about she attended the ceremony, and it was very intense. 200 people were in attendance. The Greeks do things differently, man. They do things differently. And it took an hour, and there was a whole lot of things, and you're not supposed to shave the baby's head until they get baptized. So this baby had this long golden hair, very beautiful hair, but they shaved a cross on his head, and then they did a whole bunch of other things, and then eventually baptized him and like dunked him in the water 3 times, and the baby was crying. He was insane. Because he's a child. He doesn't know he's 1 year old. He doesn't know what the hell is going on. To him, something's being done to him, and he doesn't like it, and he doesn't know what's being done to him. So that's the issue with baptizing kids. It's like they don't know. It might as well have not happened. You might as well have not done anything, because that kid's not going to remember that. Like, they're going to ask, wait, was I baptized, Mom? Dad, did I ever get baptized? Assuming they don't turn away from the way. They don't turn away from the path and become little atheists. And they have beef with God. It's just not a great way to do things, guys, you know? It's not a great way to do things. People have to, yes, receive direction. I think it's important to steer your kids in the right direction, and teach them your faith and your traditions and all these sort of things, but they ultimately have to make that choice for themselves. Otherwise, it doesn't mean anything. You know, the story of Adam and Eve, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was placed in that garden. The tree didn't have to be there. It represented a choice. If God had simply removed that tree, then you know what? They would never have had the option to disobey him. But the tree represented a choice that you don't have to be here. You have to make that decision. And we know how that story went. They chose the opposite direction, and it is our belief as Christians we've been paying the price ever since. But sometimes you have to fuck around to find out, you know? I don't think we'll ever do that ever again, because we live in this terrible version of reality that is a direct consequence of those actions. But anyway, I digress. Choice is important. So when I think about, I do want to say just one more thing. Just to really drive home this analogy. You think about taking your kids to church, right? And the issue of church is it's this big building. Everyone comes to sit and listen to one person preach. And it's a whole room of people. So you don't know if everyone agrees on the message being preached. You don't know. You can't really ask questions. You can't really, there's no back and forth. It's just one person talking. You listen, then you go home, right? And the issue of that is a lot of people could be lost or confused or just straight up disagreeing, and you won't know. And that's how you end up with situations where you're bringing your kids to church faithfully every Sunday for years, and then one day it's like, Mom, Dad, I'm actually atheist. He's like, what? How could this be? It's like, well, like, you never really had the conversations with your kids about what they actually believe. You were just following a routine. And The approach I'm going to take with my kids, and a lot of Christians might not agree with this, but c'est la vie. Instead of taking them to Sunday church religiously every Sunday, I prefer the model of bringing people over to my home, people I know, and having conversations at home, Bible study, home group, whatever you want to call it. I do something very similar right now. There's this couple, this married couple whose house I go to every 2 weeks. And a few other people come as well. And we literally just sit and we just talk about the Bible. We have discussions. And we're ourselves. There's no pretension. There's no pretending. There's this one guy who cusses all the time. I cuss as well, but for some reason I just feel uncomfortable cussing in that environment. But the point is he's vulnerable. He's not afraid to say certain things. We can talk about sex. We can talk about this. We can talk about that. But we're being sincere and we're being very vulnerable and we're having conversations around faith, and it's real. And we're getting down to the nitty-gritty things and we're asking important questions, and people can be very, very, very vulnerable, and they have been very vulnerable, and you learn a lot. And I was thinking to myself, imagine if children were raised in that environment, and that's the introduction to God and topics of spirituality and things of that nature, right? It gives them a better opportunity to come to their own conclusions and make their own decisions, as opposed to sitting and listening to someone preach for an hour or two, like whatever it is, and then you're not really intellectually engaged. So that can cause a whole bunch of issues. I think I'm going to raise my kids in a more casual, dynamic structure that allows them to engage intellectually, and I have faith that they will, through that method, come to God willingly and happily. So when you go back to dating, when you talk about traditional models of dating and courtship and marriage and abstaining from sex until you're married and things like this, it's important to have dialogue. It's important to have these discussions with your parents, with your community, as to why we do these things. I think the issue with a lot of societies is we inherited these traditions, which are good traditions, by the way, great traditions. The problem is that we fell into routine. We started doing these things and not reminding people why we do these things, why it's important to be very intentional when you meet a woman, and don't waste her time and be respectful and yada yada yada. Why it's important to wait until you're married to have sex. Why it's important to know each other's families and get the parents' blessings and all these sort of things. Why it's important for your community to be involved in some sense. Why it's important to have witnesses at your wedding. Why it's important for this. Why it's important. All of these things were put in place for a reason. It's not for vibes. We didn't just wake up one day and just come up with these weird rules that serve absolutely no purpose. No, they do serve a purpose. For example, the reason why you have people attend your wedding is to have people witness these very sacred vows you're making and hold you accountable. That's why your community is involved in your marriage. Because the whole point of a marriage is to bind you to someone, and you need things to reinforce that bind. So it's very hard to get out of a marriage when you've got people holding you accountable, saying you swore an oath. You need to honor your words. That's why divorce rates were lower back in the dizzle, when your word actually meant something. When you swear an oath, you have to fulfill that oath. These days, you can say whatever and go back on your word, and it's nothing. It's very shameful. You can promise to love someone and all these things, then you can just cheat on them and divorce them and take off their shit. It's crazy, bro. We live in a wild, wild time. All sorts of debauchery and evil. But yeah, these things were done for a reason. That's just one example. You know, sex before marriage, the reason why we say don't have sex before marriage is because sex is very powerful. It literally binds you to a person. Oxytocin is a chemical. Mainly women secrete that in their brains. And it's called a bonding hormone, but also men. Men mainly release vasopressin, and that's like, it makes you very protective. Well, once you sleep with a woman, you develop these protective instincts over her, and it's almost like you have a claim over her, like she's mine, and I want to protect her from all these other guys, yada yada yada. Like, it's chemical, like, and it serves a biological function because it's optimal for reproduction. It's best for the children when the parents are bound together, because your child has a higher rate of survival and flourishing when the parents are together, obviously. And we've seen the rates of fatherlessness and the link between crime and fatherlessness and just general juvenile behavior, antisocial behavior in fatherless households. It's very important for fathers to be in the home. Very, very, very important. And the data on that is irrefutable. So that's why we say that's part of the reason we say don't have sex before marriage, because you're literally bonding to a person when you have sex. So imagine now you have sex with 100 people. It's a mess, and it does things to your brain. People think you can just do that sort of stuff and walk out unscathed. Not true. I've talked before about how I have a friend. He's a guy, and he slept with 100 plus women. It might be 200 actually. 200 plus. He slept with a lot of girls. And he was engaged. He's married now, but he was engaged, and when he was engaged, he was telling me that he literally cannot stop thinking about cheating. Whenever he's with these girls in public, if they're at a restaurant and an attractive woman walks past, he can't help it. He looks at the attractive woman, and he's worried that he's going to cheat on his wife. I haven't spoken to him in a while, so I don't know if he's gotten that under control. But it's hard, man, because he's been training his brain for years to act that way, think that way. He's hardwired himself to be like that because it's repetition. It's a bad habit that he's been reinforcing for a long, long time. It's very, very difficult. There's all sorts of consequences that come with being promiscuous that we don't really talk about, that I could get into, but you can look it up. Otherwise, we'll be here forever if I go into it all. But there's a reason why we say don't have sex before marriage. So yeah, like, that's just, there's a reason why you say don't live together before you get married. Like, there's so many things that are traditional and that are part of the traditional lifestyle that are there for a reason. It's not just there to make your life harder and make you miserable. It's actually there because people have observed that it leads to the best outcomes. And I understand sometimes that these things can feel so suffocating, right? It's like it's too much. Like like some people might feel like it's a burden. And they can't enjoy their lives, and they just want to have fun, and they can feel like if they live this traditional lifestyle, the life will just become boring and gray, uneventful, right? And everyone else is going to be having fun while they're depriving themselves, because life is short, and you're going to die someday, and you need to live it up and fuck what everyone thinks. Just do you and live your best life, right? That's the mindset a lot of people have. But it doesn't have to be that way. I think the traditional mold is the best one, the most conducive for happiness, for flourishing, for quote unquote fun. It's not all about having fun. It's also about being responsible and producing a society that's moral and constructive. But I do think you will find that you're actually at your happiest when you do things the traditional way. The reason for that being is it places you in a structure, in an environment that yields the best crops, yields the best fruits. Love means more when it's contained and focused, and you observe these sacred boundaries, and you commit to one woman and focus on loving her and getting to know her and making the most of the relationship with her and focusing on emotional intimacy, putting aside physical intimacy for a time so you can focus on getting to know this person emotionally, and then you build this unbelievable bond, and eventually you commit physically, and it makes that when combined with the emotional stuff, it makes the physical stuff even better. And they say the couples that are most likely to report sexual satisfaction are religious couples that were virgins when they met. They are the most likely to report sexual satisfaction in their marriages. They're the most likely to report happiness in their marriages. They're the least likely to get divorced. Like, it tells you a lot. Like, the stats are there for you to look at if you want to. You can. No one really refutes this. So you can look it up right now. You can pause and look it up right now. So yeah, guys, you know what it is? When you've been living your life one way, you can't imagine living your life another way. When you've been doing something one way for a long time, sometimes the thought of switching things up, and it's like, oh, I don't want to. I'm very comfortable with the way things are right now. But there's a better way. There's a better way. And I think young people these days they need to hear that there's a better way. And I do think we need to market the traditional lifestyle better as well. I'm not sure how, but I do think it's not enough to just tell people do this. I think you have to really sell it to them so that they can be enthusiastic about it and want to get involved. So this is an attempt at me pitching the traditional lifestyle, and I think it benefits women in particular because it holds men accountable. They can't be out here sleeping around and doing one night stands and all this sort of thing, because now it's like, oh, you actually have to earn it. You actually have to prove your worth. You have to become a man worthy of being around and getting married to, and you can't even sleep with me until you've put a ring on my finger and married me in front of witnesses and all these sort of things. You force men to do better. Guys will jump over a sea of flames just to get pussy. I'm telling you, man. Niggas love pussy. It's crazy. So I think it benefits women a lot, this traditional lifestyle. The sexual liberation movement is a disaster. Absolute disaster. For men and women. No one's winning from this, guys. Modern dating is very cold and transactional. It's not fun. But anyway, people will do what they gonna do at the end of the day. But I just want people to be honest. Are you really happy with the way things are these days? Do you really feel like you're getting the best out of your love life? Do you really feel like there's a great dating scene and all these sort of things? Or do you wish like things were more romantic? Do you wish people were more committal? Do you wish there was more structure and good behavior, less debauchery? I think most people would agree that It's crazy out here in these streets. I've seen some things, I've heard some things, I've personally experienced some things. Trash. It's trash. And here in South Africa, people are fairly conservative. Johannesburg is not that conservative. But I can't imagine how it's like in places like America and like in California, all these other crazy places. I can't imagine how much worse it is there. The sort of things that are going down in those environments. And I don't want to. But I hear things. I hear stories. I read things. I'm like, ooh, that's wild. So yeah, modern dating, 0 out of 10. I'd give it less if I could. Anyway, y'all let me know what you think in the comments. I like to pray at the end of my videos. Dear Father God, thank you for this individual watching this right now. Thank you for making them whole, unique, and guide them on a path towards peace, prosperity, and purpose. Thank you for blessing this person with wonderful people in their life who love them, take care of them, and bring the absolute best out of them. And thank you for maintaining the ones that are there to do the same thing. Thank you for blessing this person with love and marriage, and sustaining their love and marriage, and making very, very happy. Thank you for blessing this person with the spirit of gratitude so they can give thanks for the wonderful things in their life. And by giving thanks, they can find peace, contentment, and attract even more blessings. Let your presence be felt in this person's life so they know that you're God, that you're real, that you love them, that you're always going to be there for them. Good health, long life, and happiness for this person and everyone they care about. In my name I pray. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen.